G'day, podcasters. Welcome back to Season 4 of True Blue Conversations. I just want to give a shout out to our show sponsor, 25-4 Coffee, for Troopers, by Troopers. For all your coffee needs, head to www.254.com.au. G'day, welcome to True Blue Conversations. I'm Adam Bloom. Today's special guest is firefighter Sarah Spicer, and she has joined us today to talk about her career in fire rescue. And Sarah is a great friend of mine and just an absolute legend and an inspiration because she is a full-time firefighter, a full-time mum, and studying in her spare time that she has not a lot of, studying psychology. And I wanted to get her on to talk about life as a firefighter. So, Sarah Spicer, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Adam. That was quite the introduction. Makes me want to get to know myself a bit more too.
It's an absolute honour and privilege to have you on. So, Sarah, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself as a young Sarah, and where did you grow up, where did you go to school, and what were your hobbies?
Okay, awesome. So I grew up in Sydney's Northern Beaches in a little surfside town called North Narrabeen. It's quite busy now, but when I was growing up, it was quite the little surfing hub. I grew up there with my two parents. My dad, Jack, was an intensive care paramedic, and my mum was a dispensary technician, usually at the local pharmacy. I'm one of three kids, right in the middle. And so we were all very close growing up. We had a great little family dynamic, and my parents still live in our childhood home, and so that's always been the centre of our universe. All of us always come and go from there, and we used to always nickname it the halfway house because all of our friends growing up would always stop in there, and it was always an open door policy no matter what time of day or night. The door was always wide open for all of us to come and go as we pleased, and have my brother and his mates eat our family out of house and home.
So you mentioned that your dad was an intensive care ambulance. He worked in the ambulance service. How much of an influence did your parents' service, like your mum being a dispensary technician and your dad being in the emergency services, how much did that influence you joining the emergency services later on?
Oh, massively. I feel as though that was always a part of our family community. Growing up, we were surrounded by it. All of our family friends and all of our childhood friends were all other kids from people in the services, whether they were kids of fireys or kids of other ambos or whatnot, nurses. It was always all of our childhood and family friends growing up all came within the services. And so to me, it felt as though it was probably going to be a given. Even though my parents always said I could be whatever I wanted to be, it always felt like the very, very natural path for me to take.
So for you, I guess, did you want to follow your dad in the same footsteps of being paramedic, or did you want to go down the fire rescue side, or how did fire rescue come about?
I wanted to be a paramedic. I was hell-bent on it. That was what I wanted to do. But unfortunately, my dad suffered really severe post-traumatic stress from his job, and he was medically retired, and he was very unwell for quite a period of time. And I remember broaching the subject with him and bringing it up with him and telling him that I was going to look toward applying for the ambulance service and going down that same path. And I wasn't really received with the response I thought I was going to get. I thought he would have been excited, but I could see that it instilled quite a lot of uncertainty and quite a lot of fear for him. And he was quite, I don't want to say distressed about it, but he was concerned that it would have had the same effect on me that it did have on him, and it still does have on him.
So for you, was that when he didn't come to be as warming and open as you thought to the decision to join, were you crushed at that, and did you think, oh well, what next, like what can I do at that point?
I wasn't crushed. I understood. I really, really understood. I understood that his reaction was coming from purely a place of love and protection. So I completely got it right off the bat. but I'm very stubborn in my ways as well. So I was still thinking, I'm going to do something, like I knew that I still wanted to work in the services because my dad really taught us growing up that if you are able-bodied and you are of sound mind, that you do everything that you can to help other people. So I knew that that was an area that I had to go, delve into. I just wasn't sure exactly of where I would land. So then I started looking into the police force as well. And then I had some friends join Fire Rescue, and I thought that's where I want to go. I liked the physical aspect of the job along with the performance aspect of it as well. And so I thought that's the niche. That's where I need to be.
Did you ever think did the military come into your thoughts as well, or was it mainly just emergency services?
The military did, but not till later on. Not until once I was well into my fire and rescue career, I started looking at, I wanted to study, and I was trying to think of proactive ways to be able to do that, still being able to serve in some regard. And so I looked at joining the military. It didn't work in that direction just purely because of kids and life as well. But it definitely did come into consideration for me, but just not at that same time frame.
So for you, when because obviously you looked into fire rescue, at what age did you make that dream become a reality? Like what did you do first off before you went down the path of joining fire rescue?
It would have been when I was about 25. I had my son a few years prior to that, and I had taken a few years off to look after him when he was little. And when I was ready to go back to work, I wanted to really go back into something that I was going to be able to make a difference and have a career that was going to be progressive, and also have a career that was going to be able to show my son as well that it's respectful and he can aim for whatever he wants to do as well. And so that's how I sort of started to really push towards joining the brigade. Leading up to it, though, was a lot of study and a lot of physical training.
Yeah, so let's delve into that a bit. Let's talk about the for people who might want to look at joining fire rescue. I'm interested to know what you actually like, the preparedness you have to do. It's like the military. It's like any other paramedics, whatever. There's a lot of prep that goes into it. So let's delve into what did you have to study? Like obviously aptitude test or and physically, what did you have to do in that sense?
Yeah, so the aptitude testing, I'll go into that a bit first. I started doing most of my studies surrounding the aptitude testing was a lot of mind pattern quizzes.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. Lots of Sudoku-like things, lots of that. And then trying to put myself in a time frame to be able to work quickly through it. So I started doing a lot of number pattern quizzes, heaps of apps and stuff I could just download onto my phone, and then little Sudoku puzzle games that I would buy from like Kmart or the news agency or supermarket, and I would try and race myself to get them done because I knew that the aptitude testing and the cognitive ability testing was going to be timed. So I tried to get myself into a place where I could think quickly.
So for you, obviously you starting to get good at doing this sort of stuff, and then physically, like, it's once you're committed, aren't you? Like you just focus and hone in. So what was the physical aspects that you had to work on that you like to get you to go, yep, I can pass everything, and like do they call you in? Like, how's it work, Sarah? What do you actually have to do?
So to get ready for the physical side of the testing, I was already training at a CrossFit gym regularly. I knew that I had to wear the fire protective uniform to do the physical test. So I knew that I had to get used to wearing a lot of hot gear and a lot of hot and heavy gear. And that you also wear a helmet as well, which can be really disorientating as well because no one normally trains like that. So with what I had available to me, I just started wearing like tracksuits and ankle weights and I would try and wear a hat, like a baseball cap, and I would try and wear a hood over the top of it to try and keep that tunnel vision when I was training, just so I wasn't getting any sort of anxiety or worry when I was having to go and do the test, because usually you're not wearing things like that when you train regularly. So I really had to get myself into a place physically and mentally where it wasn't that foreign when I turned up on the day.
And so you obviously, you got yourself into that training, and what was it like with, obviously, you mentioned your son and that you were going to juggle working full time as a firefighter and being a full time mum. Like, how did that, like, because I know it myself being a first responder as well, that the emergency, like, if you enter the emergency services, it's not like any other job. It's not like a 9 to 5. It's totally different. Where so you're on shift, and how do you juggle being a mum and being a full time firefighter? Like,
it's definitely its own beast.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's like, because there's certain shifts that there's certain things that you jobs that go longer than than the normal shift. So how do you juggle that?
Oh, it's chaos. There's no other way to put it. It's absolute chaos. But you have to make it work. There's no other alternative. When you realise that, I think when you know there's no alternative, you have to make it work, you make it work.
And I think, too, there's people who aren't in, like, what you and I do, and any first responder's job, police, ambulance, fire, it's a lifestyle, isn't it? Like, you absolutely have to live the lifestyle that you're in. Like, it's not a normal, you work Christmas, you work New Year's, there's you take your time off when you can, and it's totally different to being like a normal 9 to 5 job where it's, so how do you find that, and how have you found that with friendships and all that sort of thing? Has that been hard? Or
there's a lot of explaining, I think, when it comes, especially with your kids. You want to explain everything to them, and you want them to understand that what it is that you do is to help other people. And your kids, they'll support you. They always will, and so they understand. If I'm not around for certain things, they always understand, and I'm sure that they would prefer me to be there, but they know what it is that I'm doing, and so they're always really, really supportive.
And is that for you a sense, like, that's why you do, like, obviously it's a willingness to serve, you want to help others, but are your kids proud of their mum's firefighter? Like, that's pretty cool.
I
like,
don't know how much they care, to be honest. I really don't, but I'm sure that when they get older, they will understand. Probably much like myself. When I was a kid and I was little, I didn't think too much. It was very normal for my dad to be a paramedic. It was really, really normal because all of our friends' parents were paramedics and firefighters and cops, and so it was very normal. So for my kids, it's normal for them. They know. I think that more so I want to show them that they can do anything that they want to do, and that they can take these calculated risks that are going to be rewarding for them. And it's not all about how much money you're going to earn or accolades in that regard. Like, you're going to be more fulfilled doing something that is going to be of service to other people than it is for you to gain something from it yourself.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And you've just touched on a really key point there, is that if you're doing it for medals, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Like, you're doing it to serve. Like, you're doing it to help others. And exactly what you've said is the willingness to serve and put your life on the line because you know it yourself, Sarah. You've seen it. You've been on the front line, and we'll get into that later on in the story. But you're seeing people at their absolute worst, their worst day that they'll probably ever face, and you're going in to help them. There's nothing more rewarding than getting them back to normality, and I found that in my own self as well. Like, when you're helping someone who it's the worst day they've ever seen, and then you make it feel like normal again, like you restore normality to them. There's just something about it that, it just makes you warm inside, and you feel like you've made a difference, and you can relate to it. And I think same as what your dad went through, and you same as any first responder, you feel that, and it's really good. And I want to touch on, like, so you mentioned your dad suffered his PTS from his service in paramedics, you going into fire rescue, you knew what your dad had been through. Did that enter your mind of that could happen to me as well, and how do I deal with that, and what have you, like, coping mechanisms have you put in place to stop that, where you don't end up the same way as your dad?
Yeah, it absolutely entered my mind, and it was definitely something that it was at the very forefront of my mind as well. I remember going through college and having a conversation with a few of my peers in college and talking to them about it, and it was a thought that had never crossed their minds. And to me, that was really astounding, because it was something that is very, very much in my conscious stream of thoughts. So I wanted to make sure, and I still like to make sure, that I take as many preventative measures as I can to ensure that my mental health is robust and resilient and ready to deal with whatever I have to deal with, and to also know myself on a really, really transparent level, to be able to check in with myself and know when I'm not doing well and how to deal with that as well.
So you mentioned that, and that's another key point you touch on with, I'm thinking, like, do you get a chance to go back to, like, college and speak to the new recruits, and sort of do they sort of encourage you guys to go back and sort of help train the new recruits, and do you pass it on to them and say, really think about what you're going into, like, it's not what you see in the movies, it's this is real, like, it's a dangerous job. Do they give you that opportunity to go back and talk to them?
You definitely can go back and do work inside the college and the recruitment process with the recruits while they are training, and there's definitely opportunities to be able to talk with the recruits in regards to assisting them and describing what it is that they're going to be dealing with. However, I find more so I will go into greater detail when people reach out to me outside of the job and say that they're looking at applying, because once you're in, you're in. So it's something that you really need to think about before you even take those steps. But in saying that as well, it's really, really difficult thing to be able to call yourself out on if you know that you just can't do it. It's a hugely confronting thing to be able to say that to yourself. Like, this is just not something that I think I'm going to be able to do, because we all want to be resilient. We all want to be able to handle it. We want to. But at the end of the day, you owe it to your family at home to know whether you can or you can't, because they're the people, they're the sponge, and so they're going to feel it probably more than you do.
Oh, 100% what you've just said. Like, you just, like, because we spoke off air, and like, what your mum went through with your dad and what you guys have seen as well, it's not just, it just doesn't affect you, it affects your family, and everything that everything you talk about, it's 100%, yeah, we all want to be that robust, resilient person that goes, yeah, I can handle all this, and like, I think the greater toll is on your family. That's like I think it's across the board, veterans, I think it's first responders, anyone that is of service, it's your family that is the greatest toll and sacrifice is on them, more so than you, like, more than you would probably care to admit, I guess. And I guess it's probably the same for you in what you've experienced. Like, yeah, very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for a fact that when I'm starting to burn out, as much as sometimes I'll try and push the envelope like as much as the next person, that when my partner will say to me, you need to have some time off, or you need to just have a break, that I will listen to him 100% of the time. That's my family, and I owe that to him, and I owe that to our kids, to show up for them more so than I do for anybody else.
So let's talk about college, and you mentioned college, and so how, like, you got through your, like, recruit process, and then you went to college, and how long is college, and what's involved, like, what's like, because I'm really intrigued to know what it is that you do at college.
Oh, it's a lot. For starters, it's a lot. They put you through it at college. It's about 13 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
From beginning to end, and from the moment that you turn up, it's like stepping into another world. You're thrusted into this world that you have a lot of people, myself included, didn't have any prior understanding of before I went there. And you're sitting in lectures for 8 hours a day, and you're doing drills in the scorching hot sun, and you're up and down ladders, and you're marching, and you're learning about combustible materials. It's a huge influx of information in a short period of time. So you need to be free of any external stresses going into college, because you really don't have the capacity, I don't find, to be able to take on anything else whilst you're there. It's very all-consuming, but they run a pretty tight ship in there to get you ready for station.
Yeah, right. So where was college for you? Where?
For me, it was at Alexandria.
Yep.
In Sydney. That was where I did college for my 13 weeks, which I was really lucky because I was driving from Narrabeen, and so I was so tired by the end of the day, and so I was crawling in the door after an hour of driving there and back. But now the college is out at Orchard Hills.
Yeah, I've been out there. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty good setup.
It's a really sick setup out there.
Yeah.
But I'd be a mess driving that far. I don't know how they do it, because it's very for most people, it's very, very far away. It's extremely isolated where it is.
Yeah.
So I know that but where it is now, they just have absolutely everything that you could imagine in the one place.
Do they stay? Are you is it on camp? Like you stay on campus, or
No.
is it? Oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Okay, so it's
you're there from 7 till 3, but it's usually like 6 till 5 maybe.
Wow.
And you come and go every day.
Yeah, right. Far out. So it's did you have any one who started and then go, yeah, no, this is not for me? Did you have anyone pull out of the course, or
not during my college course? But I had heard of people, because it's quite rare to do in fire rescue, because it's such a sought after job and it's very hard to get into. So most people, when they're in, they hang on to it for dear life. So you don't really hear too much about people leaving, even throughout your career.
Yeah.
You find that when a conversation comes up about somebody leaving the job, it's quite shocking for people to hear.
Yeah, right.
However, there has been a couple of people that I have heard over time that have left, that have just felt it's not for them.
Yep.
And I really commend them for that, because it's not.
Yeah.
And to be able to admit that to yourself after going through such an arduous process to get there,
Yeah.
that's extremely commendable, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like bravery in its own self.
Absolutely. To be that in touch with yourself.
Yeah.
And to really, really know yourself on that level, to
Yeah,
say,
100%.
I'm really going to pull up stumps here.
Yeah.
It's not for me.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing to be able to do that.
Absolutely, and it's the courage in that to know that you're, yeah, absolutely. I'm not. Yeah, this isn't for me. It's not what I thought it was, and 100%. And so for you at college, what was the hardest aspect physically and mentally, and what did you learn about yourself?
I think that all of that together was just the retaining of the amount of information that comes at you for that 13 weeks that you're there. It was so much off the bat that I knew that I had to straight away just get rid of anything else that I was dealing with in life and just put all of my focus there, because there's nothing that can prepare you for it. There's really, really nothing. And when you're not used to learning about hazardous materials, and you're not used to learning about fire behaviour, it can be very difficult to retain that information.
Yeah.
That's so foreign to you. So you've really got to be so mindful of making sure that you've got that mental space to be able to take it on and to be able to let it stay in your mind, because it's hard to do that.
Yeah. Oh, and what was it like for you, like going into the hot cell and obviously learning about backdraft and flashover and all that sort of thing? What was, obviously that's, like people who are listening going, what the hell are they talking about? Like it's, you and I know what we're talking about, but yeah, like, what was it like, that aspect of the technical side of, backdraft and flashover and being in the hot cell, being in the dark, and like obviously your training, you mentioned your training that you got to a point where you could only simulate as much as you could realistically that you were like in the lead up, but what was it like being in the dark and confined space, and like what was that like?
It's extremely disorientating. You learn so much about yourself in that period, and about your other senses, which was really surprising
Yeah.
to me, because you might think that you're seeing something, and you will go through a mud map of the way that you will be hell-bent on what you believe the layout of that room is, and then you'll see it in the daylight and you are completely off. So it's a lot. I remember they try and prepare you as much as they can before you go in. There's nothing like it. You can watch a million things on television. You can read a million articles. You can learn about it, everything. There is nothing like it. There is no way to prepare yourself for that amount of heat, and to also prepare yourself for the amount that you have to rely on your crew, because you're going in with one other person, and this is going to be somebody else that you're going through college with that you might not really know that well, and all of a sudden you feel this immense amount of responsibility for them, and they do for you, because it's only you two in there. And exactly, and even when you're going in just the hot cells and you're doing training, it's still active fire. It is still smoke. It is still extremely dangerous. And so it's very confronting. There's nothing that would really prepare you for it. It's not a settling thing, I don't think, ever, no matter how many fires I go into, and I will never feel at ease, ever. You're walking into a completely foreign...
I think, and I get what you're talking about. It's fear. And fear is a good thing, because if you've got fear, it means you're thinking of the what ifs, the what if this, what if that, what if, have I done this? Have I checked this? Have I done that? And I 100% agree with you that it's the respect for fire. If you don't respect fire, that's the day you hand your stuff in and go, I'm done, because fire can bite you, which you've seen as well, and I've seen it firsthand as well. It's a beast in its own self, and I find it fascinating. Like in not a sense of, I'm a crazy, but it is. There's a science, and you've learnt that science as well. That when you see it react in the way it does, it is like, it's fascinating to just see that. Like,
yeah, it really is. It's understanding something that hasn't happened yet. You're trying to predict the behavior and the future when it comes to fire behavior, and it hasn't happened, and so you have to think of the variables. So what else could happen? All of the alternate options as to what could go right, what could go wrong. And so going in there with fear as your guide, basically, it's keeping you vigilant.
100%, and that's exactly right. And so did you find when you were obviously you trained with that other person going through, but you may never you may never see them again. Obviously your class, you go through with your class, but did the instructors change it up day to day, so you weren't with the same person? So
a lot of the time they'll change it up.
And did that was that obviously the class came together and bonded really well? It was...
Yeah, absolutely. I still remember who I went into my first fire with too. So you build that really strong connection with that person. And it was a guy that had been retained. So he had already experienced a lot of fire and a lot of fire training. And I remember getting ready to go in, and he was so supportive, and I was nervous. Naturally,
as you would be,
So I was really nervous, and I remember just feeling so secure in that moment because of him. And so I think that it really bonds you, and you bond with people throughout your career in so many different aspects in this job.
100%. I comes to my mind, I remember my first fire, and I was so scared, and it was I remember just being with people that were just reassuring, and they just reassured you and just made you you're like, what the hell am I doing here? I'm standing on a hose with a wall of flames coming at me. Am I an idiot? Is there something seriously am I mentally sane on this? It's just having that guy backing you, saying, Sarah, you've got this, back your training, you've got this. And I think that's the thing. It's that reassurance. I have got this. I've got this. I can do this, and I know exactly the feeling of what you're talking about. I think it's oh yeah, okay, all right, switch on, game time, let's go. And
absolutely.
So you finish college, and What was it like for you? What was it? Explain to me the feeling of you're passing out parade. Like, what was that like for you when you got to throw your hat in the air and you are now Sarah Spicer, you're a firefighter now. Like you.
I still don't think I've come to terms with it. 7 years down the track, I still get a bit of imposter syndrome.
So, but what was it like for obviously your dad and your family, and what was it like for them? Like, were they obviously proud of you?
It was so nice. I remember just feeling, I felt such a sense of accomplishment. Having been at home for a few years with my son, and just thinking I never would have thought that in a few years' time that I'd be here doing this. I felt really proud of myself. I could see a bit of fear in my dad's face, but I know that he was very, very proud as well. He knows how much work goes into it as well. So he's one person that really, really understood. And it was such a nice thing having my son there at my graduation. That was an amazing thing to be able to share with him. I absolutely loved that. And so, yeah, it was insane. But the next day I was sent to station. So there was no opportunity to sort of revel in that moment at all, because I was straight on shift the next morning.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about you. So where were you posted, and tell us what you remember of your first day.
Oh, I was so nervous. I was sent to City of Sydney Fire Station, so the headquarters fire station in Sydney, that has about 30 fireys on shift. On each platoon, there's about 30 fireys. There's about three pumps, a ladder platform, a heavy rescue. So there's SOs, which are the station officers for each of those trucks. And it's a humongous building going into, so I was very nervous.
So is that, sorry to cut you off there, was that 001? Is that
yes.
where? Yeah. So can you explain to me the numbers, what the numbers represent? Because I know there's people out there that go, what are the numbers? Because I know I've got numbers of 359 that are up my next station up.
Yeah, so each station just gets given a station number.
Yeah,
Headquarters is obviously station 1.
Yep.
Station 2 is reserved for the burns unit at Westmead Children's Hospital.
Okay, yep.
And then it just goes up to your 359.
359, yeah.
So every station gets given their number. So now I'm at station 38, which is at Piermont, which is my station. And when we speak inside the job, we refer to the stations by their numbers.
Oh, okay,
so there's most conversations that you'll have with other fireys or bosses, they would refer to the fire station as the number as opposed to the suburb of that station.
Yeah, okay. And do you guys, so we use like different colour codes for our fires and all that sort of, like yellow is a general message, blue is an incident, red is urgent message, and then emergency, that's our, like, you know, we need everyone else be quiet, we need to get this across. Do you guys work under a similar structure?
Yeah, we have the same thing. we use the same as the RFS.
Yeah, right.
So we've got red, which is our stop message, our red message basically, so your Mayday message, which you'll use when you're reiterating a message over to comms to ask for more appliances. And they'll basically stop any other messages coming in, and they'll focus on your message. And every other incident has its own colour-coded message as well, including when you've finished a job, you'll send a green message, which is going to be your stop message. If you're sending a general message in regards to the job that you are currently at, that'll be your blue message. If you're driving in the truck and you come across an incident, that's a white message.
Yeah, right, okay. So it's similar to And same, like, I'm guessing the acronyms that are in Fire Rescue. Same as RFS, fire out there. Yeah, the amount that you have to know is just unbelievable. Your head goes, oh yeah, it's SMEAX and ITASK.
You'll hear somebody having a normal conversation, and they'll throw a word in there, and you stop and think, is that a normal word, or is that an acronym? Does that mean something that I don't understand?
Yeah, when you and it's funny when you talk shop, you're just like, oh yeah, and then normal people who don't know it, they're like, what are you talking about? It's like So what do you like? that first day, did you have many call-outs on the first day, or?
So I basically went to my station, so to headquarters, and then I got sent out from there.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
Because they were running as a supernumerary there.
Yep.
So I got sent out to fill a back spot at another station.
Yeah, okay.
So I got sent to DY.
Yeah, right.
And I did my first proper shift at DY.
Okay.
And I would have just sat there in the mesh room all day waiting for a call. And I turned up and the truck was offline.
Oh, no.
Because they had the maintenance come out to fix it. And I didn't know what that meant. And I thought, oh, okay, so we're going to be going out then. And the SO was like, no, we're not going anywhere.
We're just here. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't go anywhere.
So what, obviously so you had a bit of a, like, say, false start sort of thing, like go to headquarters and then get sent to DY and then, so what was the reception of the crew like when you first got out to your new crew? Were they really supportive? And
yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like practical joking that was happening when I started.
Of course.
So there was heaps of that, but there was, you sort of have an idea that it's going to be like that when you're at college. You get told, like, just be wary. You're going to be the brunt of a few jokes when you turn up. So you go in with a bit of a thick skin and you know that it's all water off a duck's back and it's all just a way of just bringing you into the crew and just making you feel at home. So there was a lot of like buckets of water thrown all over you and I was soaked a lot of the time in the first few months, even first few years of being in the job.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So do they, like, explain to people who don't know, like, what's a normal day like for you on shift? What do you do? Like obviously you're waiting for calls and that. So what do you do in your downtime?
So basically you're coming into your shift and you're relieving the off-coming crew. So you'll usually liaise with them when you're coming in, finding out if there's any defects that have happened in the truck. Does anything need to be fixed or changed, or is there, for some reason, do we need to contact somebody and then pick something up or drop something off or for whatever reason? So you have a lot of liaising with the off-coming shift. You'll also find out if they had any active jobs while they were on shift. So is there any loose ends that you need to tie off while you're there? Then you'll go into your morning duties. So your morning duties will consist of checking the truck. So you'll do a check over of the truck if you're driving it. And then usually the crew will get together and we do a thing called SIMS, which is checking the tools and the inventory of the items that are stowed in the truck. Because there's so many things. There's different days will represent a different item or a different tool that's got to be checked and maintenance has to be performed on that item. Yep. So usually we'll do that together. If there's a lot of tools that are going to get checked that day, you'll go over it together as a crew. You'll usually always check in with your crew as well, and you all figure out who's driving, who's sitting where, what are we doing today, does anyone have anything that they need to do in regards to, does anyone want to do a drill that they're needing for a module or for their career progression, do we have to go anywhere, have we got any like on shift sort of training that we have to be doing. There's a lot of that. So usually we'll set the day up and, you'll have a coffee together and talk about the trajectory of the day and how that's going to go for everybody. And then you usually head out in the morning and you might get a coffee and go, do a bit of a water drill with the pump, make sure everything's going, make sure everyone's skills are up to date.
Yep.
And then if you come back to the station, there's a lot of, and if you do get downtime, you might go to the gym. I would usually sit in a desk and study because I'm at uni as well, so I have to study a lot. So I'm usually doing a lot of that, and then go to the gym, and then all through that you're back and forth with calls. Yeah,
right. And it's funny, and a bit of tongue in cheek, Sarah, I'll say this one. There's no photo shoots for the, that so many people think there's photo
shoots.
They haven't asked
me yet. I don't know why. I'm a bit offended.
I mean, everyone, whenever I tell people I'm a firer, they go, oh, you don't look like a firer, you don't have a six-pack. And I'm like, well, yeah, no, I'm a firer as well. So don't, and that's, like, I know some people go, oh, but we see them with the six-packs and they're,
I haven't seen them, so.
Yeah. So and obviously you mentioned training is so do you guys, you run through a lot of drills, but I guess because you're doing your 24-hour shifts, have you got to be wary of your fatigue? tell us a little bit about that and yeah, like obviously I know it as well that you've got to monitor fatigue, and it's always great to see new guys come through and be like, oh, we're here for 12 hours. It's like, yeah, we do 12, you guys do 24.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? Like, and do you get downtime where you can actually sleep in that shift?
Yeah.
Or tell us a little bit about that.
You just want to be in touch with yourself and know where your limits are, I think, as well. And it is hard because you want to be able to say to people, you need to speak up if you are feeling that type of way. But I understand that socially it can be a bit uncomfortable to speak up. So I like to just check in with the crew as often as I can and just, and you like anyone, you can pick up on the energy. You know if everyone's feeling a little bit tired. There's an unspoken rule that, around 2, 3 o'clock, that we're all in our room studying. So,
yeah. yes. That's how do you find it? Because I know being on a night shift, I know it usually about between, I reckon, the hardest period, I reckon, is between 3 and 6. So 3 in the morning till 6 is. You're like, oh, hurry up, like or when the changeover, like hurry up, like, and you're just like, and for you guys, it's a little bit like if we're out on a fire, it's different for us where it's, okay, we know the changeover's coming, but for you guys where it's like, oh, please don't have a job come in now, like you just, so what's that like? Explain that to us.
Because I'm always really, really optimistic, and I like to be really hopeful that it's not going to happen. So no matter how many calls I'll get, I'll still go back to the station and be like, that's it. I'm not going out again. We're not getting any more. And I get told all the time, don't say that, we're going to be going out. And I think, no. Well, I'm just going to be optimistic all the time. And so I'm always trying to convince myself that that's it. But for me, it's internally having the routine of my day still run the same way. If I don't and I let go of that, then it's chaotic for me. So I like to still try and maintain the same routine of my day as much as I can, regardless of what else is going on. So regardless of the call outs or the lack of sleep, I try to still maintain that same routine that I would normally have. And I know that I need to go home and sleep. Like, I know when I need to do that. 100% I know that, and I will make sure that I do that, because the last thing I want to do is go to work for 24 hours and my partner's at home looking after the kids, and then I come home and I'm irritable and I'm just a mess. And so I'm not going to be of any help to anybody if I'm not running on all 4 cylinders.
So how do you find the balancing act of, like, you've just been out to, like, on shift? Do you find it hard to switch off and go home and just be off? Like, obviously, if you've just been at a job and the adrenaline's up, do you find it hard to then wind down? Do you try and stay awake in that next, like, if you've been on for 24 hours?
I think that's when the routine of my day I really lean on that.
Yeah.
So I will shower before I leave work.
Yep.
And to me, mentally, that's me getting rid of the shift and letting go of whatever happened when I was on shift.
Yep.
And I put clean clothes on all the time. I try not to take my uniforms home with me, wash them at station if I can, or if I do because I might need them for something, I'll try and always have them washed before I come home. And so I'm not doing things like that at home. And then I will always shower before I get home, shower again when I get home. And then I'll try, and I know that I need to decompress because I can still feel those hairs on the back of my neck stand up when I hear a little click, which is always the pre-sound of when our bells are about to go off.
Yeah.
And so that always startles me and a rush of adrenaline comes in.
Yeah.
But I just ground myself and I remind myself of my surroundings and bring myself back into that present moment. And I'm like, nope, it's okay. You're at home.
Yeah.
You were just reminded, but you are at home and everything's okay.
So explain to me in the sense of that you obviously you've got in a routine, and has that taken a few years to get like into that routine of, and did you struggle, say, the first year or 18 months into the job and finding that routine, and it's obviously gotten better over the years? Like, because
you're completely like changing your circadian rhythm as well when it comes to your sleep, and so you're becoming this different version of yourself. and you swim against the tide a lot of the time. I found when I first started in the job, wanting to maintain my normality in regards to my lifestyle before I started, and that gets taken away from you whether you like it or not, and you have to understand that you have got to change whatever it is that you're doing to accommodate to this, because you're not going to be doing yourself any favours, and you're not going to be doing the people around you any favours either.
Yeah. And so obviously, so you mentioned that you're at Piedmont now. So what was it like? Did you put in for a transfer to get to Piedmont, or how did that work?
That was sort of circumstantial. I sort of did, and I sort of didn't at the same time. I'd been at headquarters for coming up to 6 years.
Yeah, right.
And I had just sort of felt as though it was time to experience another station and just to do something a bit different. And it sort of just coincided with there being a position that was vacant at Piedmont. I keep going to say 38.
Go for it. No,
Station
38. Yeah, that's fine.
So it just coincided that there was a position that was available, and because I'd been at headquarters station for so long, I'd basically done my time there, as you'd say, and I just approached our inspector, and he said, "Yep, that's yours. You can take it."
So explain to me in the sense of, obviously you've got your crew, and so you transferred to Piedmont as a senior firefighter. I'm guessing at that stage, or how's it work?
I was still a QF at that stage.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. So you're basically just taking where you are in your career with you wherever you go.
Yep.
And it doesn't change in regards to what station you're at or anything like that. You get given a service number when you first start in the job, and that's basically where you sit in the pecking order, basically, in regards to the brigade.
So have you got, obviously you've got a one stripe, and then, so if people who are wondering, Sarah, how it works, how does the rank structure work for fire rescue?
So basically, when you start off at college, you'll get given your service number, and you'll get given your green recruit epaulets. Yep. That's when you're at college. Yep. Once you leave college, your epaulets get taken off you, and you basically run no epaulets on your shoulders for about 2 years, and you'll be called a level 1 fiery then. Yep. And then you'll do, I think it's about 2 years you do in the job where you're doing modules and doing drills, and you're experiencing jobs, and you're putting all of that basically into a portfolio to then be promoted to a qualified firefighter, which is one stripe. And then the same goes basically as you just continue to climb the ranks, which is going to be 2 stripes for a senior fiery, 3 stripes, which is you're still classified as a senior fiery, but we call them 3 stripers. Yeah. And then you can start to take a different turn in your career, whether you want to go down the path of a leading firefighter, which is going to take you down the role to then becoming a station officer, so becoming an on-station boss, or you can sit in your 2 or 3 stripes for as long as you like, and you can stay at a station, or you can take other external sort of roles, internal roles within the brigade.
Yeah, okay. So, and you're a 2-striper now, or are you?
I'm a QF at the moment, and we're waiting on having operational shortages. Says that there's no courses running at the moment. So
yeah, nice, yeah, cool. And it's so you.
We'll see what happens with this election.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
Yeah.
So touchy subject.
Yeah, I'm not getting into that.
No, we won't. I don't want to have a gotcha moment for you or anything like that. Yeah, so no. But so you ended up being very active in the 1920 1920 the year.
Oh.
The
Showing my age.
the 2019-2020 devastating bushfires that happened. What was that like for you? And did you, when you because it was hell for us, and it was just it was just unrelenting. What did you learn as a crew as you went out and dealt with just that crazy season?
Oh, that was so sad. I really don't think there's another word for it. It was just heartbreaking, those fires. They were something else. I can still smell them in my gear bag. I feel like I can still open up my bushfire bag and still smell it. It was devastating. It was heartbreaking. And you really see the strength of community in times like that. Never mind what they're doing. It's the communities that really are the thing that restored the faith in humanity during those times. Absolutely.
And I think, for you guys, because it's more like you guys are predominantly structure fires and rescue and I guess for you, did you learn a lot more about fire and facing what bushfire is compared to structure fire? And what did you take away from that?
I think that you can predict a lot better when it comes to structure fires as opposed to bushfires.
Yeah.
They're so unpredictable.
The biggest thing I learnt too, and the biggest thing, exactly what you're saying, is you watch it's so different watching a hazard reduction to a wildfire. Like a wild bushfire is it's just a beast in itself, and you just see it. And same as a structure fire, you just see the total difference, and you're like, wow, this is so different from anything that I've ever experienced. And I think you're 100% correct that a structure fire, you can suppress it a lot more and a lot quicker than you can a wildfire.
Yes.
So obviously for you, where you were everywhere, I'm guessing. Like you guys were just deployed everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much. All up and down the coast.
Yeah,
I don't think I have a completely vivid memory of where I was, because the deployments were so fast that you basically got called up and you were just put on a bus and you were sent to wherever you were going. And I went up the coast and then I went down the coast. And so when I reflect on where I was, I definitely think that I'm getting the positioning wrong with the suburb, just because we were just everywhere. Yep.
Yeah, and I think it was just one of those seasons that was just crazy. And then obviously we had COVID and the craziness of COVID after that. And then we moved into the floods, and it just started to rain and didn't stop. And you were deployed in 2022 to the floods, and you were deployed to Lismore and a few other places as well. And what did you learn about yourself in this experience? Because you'd never faced this before, and what was that like?
That was so devastating for people. That really, really broke my heart, seeing what people lost during the floods. There was so much devastation. But again, like the bushfires, you're so restored in regards to your faith in humanity when it comes to situations like that, because it takes such devastation to see the best in people as well. But what I would have taken away from it, though, would definitely have been more of a humane aspect as opposed to anything else, and knowing that outside of being there in your uniform, people are just happy to see you. And to really go in with an open heart to these people's homes, and to always respect their home. You know, you might be walking through a big pile of mud and dirt and what seems like rubbish, but this is someone's whole entire life and their foundation and their memories. And so I found that no matter what I was doing, no matter how much it looked like a big pile of dirt and rubbish, it was someone's home, and to always treat it with respect, and to handle things still with a lot of care. And a lot of fragility, not only just their possessions, but the people as well.
I think, and you and I spoke off before the podcast, that we both felt very intrusive on people's, and, you know, and we both mentioned that for me, I know my own self, I much prefer a fire in any sense, because it's quick, suppressed, they lose everything. And I know that I'm trying to make it sound not as...
It's more of a Band-Aid effect.
Yeah.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Rip the Band-Aid off. And it's, you know, and I don't want to sound heartless there where they lose everything, and it's, you know, but it is. They
preserve yourself.
Correct.
As a responder.
Yeah, correct. As flood, I just felt so... And to throw people's lives out on the street to just rot away and wait to be picked up. It was something else, wasn't it? And you experienced exactly the same thing.
Very slow burn.
Yeah. And I find floods more devastating than fires, because they take a lot longer to recover from too, because the water doesn't recede for so long. It just you know, fire, it's through, it's gone, see you later. As a flood, the waters can take weeks up to months to recede. And
there's a lot of conversations with people where they're begging you for help, and you just have to, all you're left to say is, can't do anything until it stops raining. There's literally nothing that we can do until it stops raining.
That's right.
And people are standing there with their hearts open and begging you for you to help them, and you want more than anything to be able to make it stop and to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And it's very, very hard to be able to tell somebody that there's nothing that you can do until it stops raining.
Yeah. And that's not the answer they want to hear.
No,
They,
I don't want to be saying it.
Yeah. And I found that very hard too, that I found it that it was very... Sometimes there was just no words. You had no words to say... All you could say is, my heart's breaking for you. Like, and I found that too, that there was nothing that I could compare it to in the sense of everything that I've ever faced in being a first responder. I couldn't compare it to anything because I had nothing to, like, there was nothing to, like, I had nothing in the memory bank or no experience.
It's when you come out with the non-verbal communication.
Yeah.
Going with the hugs.
Yeah, literally.
And they say, you shouldn't be doing that. And I think, no way.
Yeah, well,
give everyone a hug.
Sometimes...
There's nothing else.
No, that's right. And it was just like, what do you do here? Like, this is uncharted territory. Like, it's, and I guess the only sense is that, yes, we've been through them now, and you can draw, in future, and I hope that there's no more floods for same as you. I've seen enough water to to last a lifetime, but I think it's like you can draw on that in the future, that you can draw on your experiences to try and help later on down the track if there's other floods again, and I hope there's not. So same for you, and
Absolutely.
Same for all of us who went through it. But I think for you, and how do you, obviously you've got a great camaraderie with your fellow mates that you work with, and how do you decompress from a hard day? Like, how does Sarah go, shit, that was a really bad one, or that was a really bad accident, or that was a bad fire? How do you deal with it, and how do you decompress and switch off?
A lot of it, I think, is just knowing your limits yourself, where you can, what you can do to push it, and what you can do to when you need to pull back a little bit. So I love being outside and being outdoors as much as the next person, and training and being in the ocean. But sometimes I just want to sit on the couch and spend time with my family and just be with them.
And I guess for you, in a sense, you mentioned family and being a mum, that grounds you as well, being, and you're just trying to be the best mum in the world to your kids. Does fitness play a massive part in who you are as well, and decompressing what you've...
Absolutely. Yeah, massively. Yeah, it becomes your therapy.
Yeah.
It becomes your, like, it's so cathartic, and it makes you feel as though all those natural, amazing neurons just pumping through your veins and your brain. And
yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I've found fitness now, and it's helped in my mental health journey. And if only I found it.
Medicine.
Yeah. If only I found it years earlier, like it would have been amazing. Like, yeah, it would have made life so much easier. But I think for you too, do you love the beach and the outdoors, and does that help? Is that a calming influence as well?
Completely. I grew up on the ocean, like right with it at my doorstep. So it's where I feel the most at home. It's where I feel the most safe and supported, and I feel very grounded and centered whenever I'm at the beach or just in the water. It's where my family comes together. It's where the kids love to be. And so it's definitely a place that really, like, refills my cup. Yeah,
no. And obviously your dad, you mentioned earlier on in the podcast, your dad, can you bounce ideas off him and things that you've been through that he's similar as well? Can you bounce ideas off him and say, Dad, look, this is where I'm at, and how much of a support has he been in helping you, like, just decompress what you've gone through?
He's a great soundboard for me.
Yeah.
He brings such a unique perspective for me, because me now being a fiery and him being an ambo, there's a different perspective to the jobs that you don't get.
Yeah.
And so when I will go to a medical job and I'll want to debrief with him, he'll always tell me a perspective from a paramedic's point of view.
Yep.
And it's always so settling, and he gives such great advice as to how to handle situations, and how not to handle certain situations and when to just let go of them.
Yep.
And he's one person whose advice I will take 100% of the time.
I think it's so great that you've got your dad there, and you know that he's been through similar. He understands. He knows. You know, and it's great to have like people like calming influences that can help you. And I think that's just, if you can find that, because obviously, as you've said, and it's different with every family. Like, you know, some people that have got many first responders in police or ambulance or fireys, they understand it, they get it.
Yeah.
But for the average family who the first, like you might have been the first person that had ever joined, they don't get it. And there's certain things that you like. There's the dirty aspects of the job that you shall, like, you want to keep from your family, because you know, and you know that yourself.
Absolutely.
Like there's certain things that you can't tell your kids. You can't, you know, you can tell your dad because your dad gets it.
Yeah.
But there's others that you in your family you can't tell them that side.
And you don't want to tell them. You don't want to put that on them. They didn't choose that lifestyle.
No,
they didn't make that choice. So I know that for me, I'll go over with my partner whatever jobs I had in my shift, and we'll talk about it. And he's extremely supportive, and he'll always say that he's happy to hear about anything that I need to talk about. And I know that he would, and I know that he'd support me 100%. There's certain details that I might not go into in great depth, though, because I don't think that that's fair.
No,
really.
No, and you don't want to burden them with what you've
exactly.
already, with the burden, and it's, you know, it's, but as you've said, it's the weight that you've chosen to carry. It's you know,
and you need to know yourself where the right avenues to put that are.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, you know, your partner isn't the dumping ground that you need.
No.
There are other avenues as to where you can put all that information. You can write it down. You can see professionals.
Yep.
You know, I've got my dad who I get to talk to, and I've got other friends who do other jobs. Maybe they're a doctor or a nurse, and so they have understandings of that as well.
Yep.
But it's understanding and very much reading the room of where you can put these types of, I guess, like trauma aspects of your life, and knowing that it's your family that's at home. They're not your emotional dumping ground.
No, that's right. And I think it's having the awareness in your own self to understand that. That's key as well. And you've got a real passion for psychology, and you, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, you're studying psychology. So, and you're doing this full time, which I just absolutely take my hat off. I'm like, where do you find the time to do all this? Like, this is just amazing. Being a mum, being a full-time fire, and studying psychology. So, in the aspect of that's really intriguing that you're getting a sense, and we spoke about this before the podcast, of your aspect towards this and your experiences that you've faced being a firefighter, and has that helped you in the classroom, and what is it that you want to learn about becoming a psychologist and then helping in the emergency space? How has those experiences helped with your in the classroom?
It's helped massively, and I think a lot of that has to do with not taking on the path of studying psychology off the bat. I got to experience my work and my career as just a normal firefighter with no understanding of the psychological implications of this job to start off with. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I decided to start studying that I could then see it through a different scope and a new lens as to what I saw it from before. So I've got these two different versions of myself and these two different perspectives that I can now compare. So there's the perspective of myself as a normal firefighter, somebody who doesn't have the understanding and the psychological background. And now there's the firefighter that is progressively gaining that psychological understanding and background. So it's a really interesting place to be able to compare those two versions of myself. And it helps at uni as well, because there's a lot of people that are in my course and that I study with that don't have any understanding as to the real effects and the real emotional effects of our work. And I feel as though I can be somebody who can provide them with that understanding and that real raw and authentic understanding that they're not going to get from a textbook and that they're not going to get from a study. So that's been really beneficial, I think, not only for myself, but for my peers as well. I want to be able to gain an understanding of the impacts of these organizations and what they have on our brains and our lives, so we can put in preventative measures before we are exposed to so much trauma, because we are just normal people doing extraordinary jobs.
So has your teachers at so your lecturers and that, have they come to you and said, hey Sarah, we're really intrigued and really interested in getting, and what have they asked you to give examples of certain jobs and things?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that they picked up on it when I started doing my assignments, because it's what I had to relate to. So I would always use my career as a point of my assessments and my essays, because it's where I could really give a very honest perspective as to how things were. And so then my assessors and professors would pick up on that. So there is a lot of question asking and a lot of examples that get pulled for discussion amongst my lectures in regards to our job and what it is that we have to deal with, and the traumas and basically the scar tissue that forms in our brains when we are exposed to such horrific and visual and traumatic events.
Yeah. So, and I love what you're touching on, where you feel, and I think you are in such a unique position of, being a firefighter who's studying psychology to then come to, say, a fellow firefighter like me, and I feel that I'd open up more to you than someone who doesn't understand what we've been through, and I think that is so. I think it's amazing that you're doing this, because I really think that it's going to help so many first responders who can relate. Like you've been at the coalface. You've seen it. You've seen it firsthand. And it's not just read out of a text. Well, it's and I'm taking and I'm not. I'm going to watch what I say here, but it's you know what I'm trying to say.
Of course, and I think that that's hugely impactful for the progression of our organisations.
100%.
Is having somebody that we can assimilate to.
Yeah.
Having somebody that we can relate to in these conversations, because you would know that there is an unspoken culture that we don't talk about our struggles, and we don't talk about the emotional and the psychological impacts of what has happened and what we've seen. There's a huge amount of that culture. And to break that, I don't necessarily think that you're going to break that with a professor in a white coat. You're going to break that by having people on the ground level that live that same life. Yeah.
Well, and I know, we were talking off air, and you said it where everyone's real talkative before someone walks into the room, and then it's
someone comes in with a clipboard, and
everyone's like, oh, have you got anything to say? Oh, no, we're all quite. But I think you're right, that will break down eventually, and I think it's important to say yes, that. Just acknowledge that there is a problem, and it's, and like you said, don't be afraid to speak up and ask and say, hey, I am struggling, this is, and I think more needs to be done in that space, and it's, let's hope it will be done. We can only hope, but you've got a real passion for PTS and the trying to stop PTS and the trauma aspect of things. How do you feel that once you've done your psychology degree, how can you implement those into first responders and helping? What programs do you hope to see into the future that can help with accommodate this sort of PTS and dealing with trauma?
I think more than anything that knowledge is power, and understanding what it is going to be the crux of how we can fix it. Knowing what are your triggers, what are the things that make your heart race a bit faster, that make your hands and your palms go a bit clammy and a bit sweaty. Understanding that about yourself is going to give you the power to be able to protect yourself and put these preventative measures in place that are going to be able to help you and help your career, because it's not going to be a one shoe fits all solution. Everybody's different. So to say that we have to have a blanketed solution, I don't think it's going to work. It has to be customized to each individual because everyone is an individual. Our tolerance to things is completely unique to us. Yeah. And so it's more going to be about understanding ourselves and being more in touch with yourself as opposed to anything else, because that way you're going to be able to know where your limits are and know when you need to either step back a little bit, you need to take that minute, you need to take a day, or whatever it is that you need to do, because you can feel the onset of things starting to bubble below the surface.
Yeah. And I think, too, a really good thing that is what you just mentioned is everyone's resilience is different. Like, everyone's got a different, like, resilience level, and you know, like, there's people that can, their resilience level's really high, and they can, you know, there's a lot of, and it's like you said at the start of the, like, when we were talking before the podcast, that it's the jobs that you don't like, that, you know, yeah, you can mentally, like, you get prepared for, okay, we're going into a really traumatic situation here, like there's been a really bad MVA, or you know, and it's the jobs that you don't, like, get prepared for, that's when it happens.
Absolutely.
And you 100% agree that you like, but if you're having these conversations and you're, you know, and there's workshops in place that can stop and you know, if you, it's more, don't be reactive, be proactive in it, and change and get on the front foot and stop it before it's, you know, before it becomes a problem. Be proactive on it and not reactive when it's, oh, wow, he, you know, didn't see that, or she was.
It's pre-briefing, not debriefing.
Yeah, correct.
We need to be doing.
Yeah, that's right.
More than anything else.
And that's, and I guess in a sense for you as well, and it's the same for me. The amount of, like, yes, there's training, and, you know, but it's that there's that uncertainty always of every job's different, you know, no matter how much you mentally prepare or you train for, there's certain things that are just outside your control, outside your, you know, your realm of what you've trained for, but you've just got to try your best and be as mentally prepared as you can be going into any situation. And
completely. And it's allowing yourself the ability to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And to be the first person that puts their hand up and says, I'm actually not doing that well.
Yeah.
Be the person that makes the change.
Oh.
Because if we all sit there with our mouths shut, we won't be able to put these changes in place.
And I love it, don't sit on the sidelines with a water bottle. Get in the fight, get in the game, and you know,
That's
and
absolutely right.
Make a decision to, you know, be part of the solution, not throw stones to the problem and go, you know, oh, I'm going to sit on the sideline. If there's a problem, speak up. Like, don't, you know, and don't, I guess, break down that stigma of, don't feel that you're being judged for speaking up and saying, you know, like, and that's,
vulnerability is going to be your absolute superpower. It's going to be your strength.
100%. And I think too, what it is that you give yourself, like, I know for me, if a crew member, and I know you'd be the same, if someone puts their, like, to say, yes, this is not, like, you know, I'm not doing, I absolutely take
100%
take my hat off to you. Like,
I'm
you
sitting
know,
there going, yes.
Yeah. That's it. You've got the courage to say it. Like, 100%. Like, that is amazing. I'll respect you more than if you try and hide it away and, you know, no, everything's great, and when it's not.
No, we're not about that anymore.
No, we're not.
We're not doing that anymore.
And I think you've probably seen so you joined in 2016. You probably seen in the last 7 years a massive change, and the cultural change too has been huge in fire rescue, and is it been for you a rewarding change as well, seeing that change being where you are now from where you were, like, when you started?
Oh, absolutely. It's great to see them just trying, whether they get it right or they get it wrong. It's just having a go. And trying to find something that's going to work. You're dealing with a lot of people that are very, they're not going to be forthcoming, you know? So you're really trying to break hundreds of years of culture when it comes to this. And to see that they are just trying, and there is attempts, and there's panels, and there's surveys all the time just to try. then you can only commend that. Because you're not getting an influx of people necessarily saying with opinions and ideas, and you're not dealing with an organisation like that. So to have people that are willing to sit there and try, you can't fault them for that. Whether they do get it right or wrong, you just can't fault them for having a go.
At least they're doing
Exactly.
something. Like, as we've just said, the biggest thing would be if they're not trying to do something.
Yeah.
Like, they can see the problem, but they're not trying to fix it.
Yeah.
As they're trying, and it's, like you know yourself, it's like any organisation, sometimes the wheels turn a little bit slower than what they should, but, they're trying. They're turning. And that's it. Exactly. There's the only... So, Sarah, if you look back now from when you joined in 2016 to where you are now, what are you most proud of in being a firefighter, in what you've been through in the last 7 years, and what do you take away into the future?
I think that I'd be most proud of always being true to my virtues. That would be the biggest thing that I take pride in, is you're joining an organisation that, like we said, is hundreds of years of culture. And you're wearing a uniform where you all blend in and look the same. But if you can still remain true to yourself, true to your integrity and your virtue, then that's the best thing that you can be able to have. And the most pride that I have looking back on myself and my career is that I can always say that I've always been true to my virtue.
And so if you could go back to Sarah as an 18-year-old, what advice would you give to yourself, and would you change anything?
I think I would change things. I know that a lot of people say that they wouldn't, but I think I would. What those things would be, that would take a bit of thought. But what would I say to myself? I'd say that to have a crack, have a go at whatever it is that you're wanting, just to have a go.
And what plans do you have going into the future? Like, what's in future for Sarah? Like, obviously, finish a psychology degree, be a mum, but career-wise and into the future, what plans have you got?
Oh, I've got grand plans. I think I just want to do... There's lots of things I want to do. I love the fire brigade, but it's not everything to me. So there's other avenues, other careers I want to try. There's other things I just want to have a go at. So I just want to try lots of different things. And I don't want to look back on my life when I start to reflect on it and feel as though I left any stone unturned. So I just want to be able to have a go at whatever it is that is my passion and that fuels me and that sets my soul on fire.
No regret.
Exactly.
No regret at the end. Yeah. So what advice would you give to any young person, or anyone for that matter, who is looking at joining fire rescue in regards to training, being physically fit, but also mentally strong, because going into the emergency services is not a normal job.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to anyone?
I would definitely say to young people, anyone that was looking at joining the brigade, to know yourself and to know who you are, and to have to know exactly where either your limits are when it comes to your mental capacity and your physical capacities, because we all have them and they're all different, but you have to be able to be true to yourself, to know that you're going to make an impact, or to know that you are going to take yourself and actually be of service to your communities.
And I think too, it's what you've just said is that, like you said, it's no normal job. Like, you've got to be, like, it's a life and death job. You're not gonna, it's not like any other normal 9-to-5 job that every time you go out, there's a chance that you might not come back. And I think, having the mental capacity to go that I don't know if I'm going to come back. And like, I guess for your family, they know that you're 100% committed to being a firefighter. It's your willingness to serve. It's the same for me. My family knows the same thing, that if as tragic as it would be, that if I was to perish out there, that I'm doing something for my community, and that's why we did it.
Yeah.
That's why we joined.
We all need to just be living in service of others.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And there's a quote, Sarah, that I want to finish with, because I want to thank you for your service to New South Wales and also your community. You're an inspiration to us all, and thank you for all you do for first responders and veterans and people who are suffering mental health issues. Your advocacy in the space for change. There's a quote that I really believe sums you up, and if I can, I'd love to share this.
That'd be amazing.
And then I'm actually going to share a prayer with you as well. So,
I love that.
and
Thank you.
And it's something that, so this is the quote: confidence in yourself is built through acts of everyday courage. There is only one you, and there will never be another you. That's your power. It always seems impossible until it's done. That's beautiful. Yeah, you've done some amazing, inspirational things that, are just out there and crazy, and things that even you said you didn't, the imposter, you're not an imposter, you're an absolute legend. So, and it's been that was a quote from Mel Robbins, and it's been an absolute honour to call you a friend, which you are. I absolutely love calling you a friend and a fellow sister firefighter. So,
absolutely.
It's awesome to be with you.
I feel the same. Thank you.
No, thank you, and I want to thank you for coming on True Blue Conversations and sharing your story. And I'm going to finish with the firefighter's prayer. So this is the firefighter's prayer. So
I love it.
So a firefighter's prayer. When sirens sound, when I respond, when urgency is there, I ask, O God, that you would heed a firefighter's prayer. When I encounter any scene with smoke and flames in force, help me to hear the faintest cry and then locate its source. Help me to work effectively, extinguishing the flames, protecting lives and property regardless of their names. Please keep me focused on my task and help me to be brave, to give the very best in me to rescue and to save. And should it be through circumstances, my life you cannot spare, surround my family with your love and keep them in your care. Amen. That's our firefighter's prayer. So, and Sarah, I think it's a really great way to finish the podcast. And I just want to say once again, thank you so much for everything you do. And you're an absolute inspiration. And just keep on being Sarah. You just inspire so many.
Oh, thanks, Adam. Well, the same goes for you too. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review for the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts.